Hello, everyone. Hope you can hear me okay. Welcome to iNACOL's September Teacher Talk webinar. We're so grateful to have you all here with us today. My name is Natalie Abel. I'm a program manager here at iNACOL, and I'll be helping to facilitate and moderate today's webinar. We are so grateful to have Lindsey Own and Lina Rose of the Evergreen School here with us today to discuss makerspaces and maker education. Lindsey is a makerspace coordinator, and Lina is a makerspace teacher, so they can provide us with two perspectives on ways to get started with maker education in the classroom and some tangible examples to get you started here today. So I promise not to take up too much of your time. You're not here to hear me speak, but I have just a couple administrative items before we get started. So in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, you'll see a chat box. Please introduce yourself. Let us know who you are, where you're from, what you're hoping to learn today. Share your own experiences in maker education. We're all here to learn together, so we really encourage a deep discussion in the chat box, and we're all here to learn together. So don't be shy, and share your knowledge and expertise as well. I will note that we have an entire team here with us from Santa Ana Unified. We're grateful to have you guys all here today. It's fantastic you're joining us. Also, if you are a member of the Twitterverse, you can share what you're learning there as well using #Makerspace, and you can tag iNACOL and you can tag Lindsey as well. So those are both in the chat box there for you. Thank you, Ashley. And lastly, today's webinar will be recorded and archived on the inacol.org website, so you'll be able to access this full recording later as well as download the slides. So we'll send you links to those resources in a follow-up email for you to access in the future. So with that, I'm honored to have Lindsey and Lina here with us today, and I will now turn it over to you. So thank you.
Thanks, Ashley. This is Lindsey, and Lina and I are sitting here in our makerspace right now, ready to talk to you guys.
This is Lina. I was here till 10:30 last night laser fitting. I love it.
And that's pretty much all the time. Looking at the introductions you guys are going through, it's really exciting to see people from all over, as well as like combination of people who are already doing makerspace stuff and people who are new. Especially those of you guys who are makerspace teachers, please jump in and add your experience as we go. I think there's a way that you can like raise your hand if you want to say something out loud that we can, I think Ashley can thumbs that up, and then you guys can contribute as well. And please ask questions as you go. We're watching the chat thing so that we can see questions as they come up. So this is just introduction to us real quick. Like Ashley said, I am the coordinator for our makerspace. So that means this is my full-time job. I work with my colleagues throughout the school to design projects for people who come in here. And I have the coolest job ever. And that's me in the middle of the picture.
And that's me in my black and white sweater, which all my pictures apparently are of. I teach 5th grade here. I also do our student activities and student council, and I just work closely with Lindsey. I'm thinking of all school projects as well as being in the lab with my class as much as we can. I think we were here day 2.
Yeah, somebody did beat you. But,
oh.
Yeah. So before we had our dedicated makerspace, like, just to start thinking about, I know a lot of people always have questions about, like, how do you even start this? How do you even convince your administrators to begin thinking about a makerspace? How do we even start this at all? And so before we had a makerspace, we had probably about 3 years where several of us were actively, like, planning and thinking about how we can do this kind of work and doing little experiments of what kind of projects we can do. And we were trying to just build up this mindset throughout at least our part of the school, which for me used to be middle school science. But at least in our part of the school, the idea of tinkering to learn. And and that building stuff helps you learn not just content but also skills, and that those are super important. And so we bought some makey-makeys, and we were able to get a 3D printer. And the picture there on the bottom middle, ooh, I'm going to test out one of the features. I'm going to circle it. That picture on the bottom middle, that's a picture from Lina's 5th grade class. And again, this was before we had the makerspace, but we did have the 3D printer. Why don't you kind of talk about that project?
Sure. I think this is a good example of a project, because I think the other thing that we did besides trying out these new tools is we looked at what curriculum we already had that was makery, and then said, okay, well, how can we bring that to lab? How can we bring tools to it? So what they did here was make a 3D artifact after creating a civilization, after a year of learning about ancient civilizations and archaeology. And what we used to do is make the artifact out of any supplies like wood, and foil, whatever we kind of had around, which was a lot of equipment for us to have in our classroom. And the quality of the projects was okay. But then 2 years ago, we got the 3D printers, and we did our first round of designing the artifact in Tinkercad and then 3D printing it. And what was amazing about this is the product's incredible. We get to use the technology, and it was actually faster on the kids' end. The printing still takes a while, but it was neater and faster for them, and actually designing took less time on the computer than it did by hand, and it came out more like they wanted it to.
So that was a really cool, like, pre-makerspace project, but that was still building those concepts. The other pictures that are here are kind of a combination of things. There's the picture immediately to right, that one picture I'm circling here. That's a project I did in my 7th grade science class, where the kids were doing a lot of tinkering. We had just done a big project about hydroelectricity, and several of the students, you know, a bunch of kids made like picture books and kind of more traditional project-y projects, but several kids like invented new types of dams that, you know, were less impactful on the ecosystem, or built various things like that. And that was a really just fun way of thinking about this idea of tinkering to learn, and that was super fun. Another really neat experiment that we did before we opened our space, but that we've continued. This is a picture from a special project that we did that we call Adventure Days, and we've been doing that every year since 2013, where our middle schoolers have 2 days to implement a project, and it can be almost anything. They do proposals, and there's cooking stuff and digital technology stuff, and you know, artistic stuff. Kids have choreographed dances, made garments, all kinds of things. And so that just added to building this idea of the importance of kids making stuff. And this picture that I circled, the young lady in the dress with the lights on it, this was a student who in traditional technology class didn't feel successful and didn't feel like she was a maker, a technology person. But she dove into this project, and because it was hers, and she designed it, and she did the work. And this, I love this example of something that when the kids take it on for themselves, it becomes not only just more meaningful to them, but also they feel more successful because they designed it and they did it. So, I mean, point of this slide is basically just pointing out that we did a lot of work before we created our space. And so when Lina and I are here to talk about getting started with makerspaces, it's so much more than just the space itself. It's building the mindset as far as you can. Before we had our space, it was, you know, very deeply in our middle school science program. It was very deeply in 5th grade. It was in a few other places here and there throughout the school. But by building that up, that really got us ready for when we opened the space that was school-wide. Everybody was ready to dive in. And so that groundwork was really important. Both of us would be thrilled to talk more to folks about how to get that groundwork going.
Well, I think to add to that, too, is that it wasn't just with the kids, it was with the teachers. So we did a lot with our faculty meetings and our before school, where we actually did maker activities with teachers. We just built a new school, so we did some activities around what we would imagine our school to look like, and we did design thinking with our teachers on that. And then also offered as a committee being able to try out different tools on their own. And I think teachers having fun with the tools brings it into the classroom. And I think that was a huge piece of it being successful, because the teachers were also enjoying it, not just seeing kids enjoy it.
Yeah, so the having the teachers starting to understand the tools was really helpful as well.
In the process.
And the processes, yeah. And so then that was basically from about 2013 until, that was what it looked like from the school perspective, from about 2013 until spring of 2014. Before that, there was also like design for the space and planning what equipment to buy, but the kids didn't see that, and most of the faculty didn't see that piece. And we'd be happy to tell you more about that as well. But what I really would like to get into is the grand unveiling in fall of 2015, last fall. We opened our official space. And so this is a picture of really the main part of our space. It's kind of the central part where most of the building happens. We have a little digital tech lab that's off to the side that we use as well. Oh, I'm going to use the tool again. The digital space is that direction. And then over to the left is a little bit more of like a traditional shop space. We have some woodworking equipment, and that's also where our laser cutter lives. One thing I know, so cool, right? One thing I'd love to just throw in is that, like, you know, we have a lot of expensive equipment, honestly, and we had a decent budget to get this thing rolling, but it's completely not necessary. Our laser cutter, while it adds a lot to our program, it's not necessary to do this kind of work. We love it, but if you can't afford one, don't think that you can't do a makerspace. Hatton from the CoLab Makerspace just asked what age group we work with. Sorry, we didn't explain our school at all. We're preschool through 8th grade, so 3-year-olds through 14-year-olds. And our preschoolers absolutely do come in to our makerspace. So they use it, not as much, of course, as the bigger kids, but from kindergarten up, the kids are in here a lot, you know, at least once every 2 or 3 months, which, you know, when I have 500 kids, that's a lot. Heather M. asked, how did you fund this? We are a private school, and so we funded it through a campaign with our families. Yes, we love that we work with the youngest kids too. We funded it through our families, but we know tons of people who do work in public schools who use Donors Choose a lot. My buddy Dan Ryder in Maine, he's a high school English teacher who has a makerspace in his room, and he's used Donor Choose to great effect. So I highly recommend that. There are also organizations that you can write grants to. The Allen Distinguished Educators Program, which is based here in Seattle, gives pretty substantial grants for building maker programs. And yes, like Hatton says, there are a ton of grants available, but Donors Choose and Allen Distinguished Educators are the two that I really know the best. So those are both highly recommended. But yeah, this is our space. We opened up in the fall. Allen, no S at the end. Allen, here, I'll type it because I can do that. Allen Distinguished Educators. Lina and I sent you a, it's pretty cool. Yeah.
We just got our plaques for being finalists for their awards last year. It's exciting. I think though that the space is kind of important to think about, even if you don't have all of the tools, for kids to be able to fluidly move between crafting and electronics and more hardware. The flow of it is really great that kids see that those things go together versus being separate, which you might see if it's just a technology class or just a woodworking class.
Definitely. We have like our 3D printers You can see our 3D printers in the picture, and even though most of the work on them, like the preparation work on them happens on the computers, they're still in our crafting space because they flow back and forth, and the kids will 3D print something and then paint it or hot glue something or you know, incorporate it into some basic electronics that they're building. So that's definitely an important integration, is keeping all of those pieces together. Another important part of the space design that I'd want to mention is there's a researcher at the University of Washington. Her name is Sapna Cherian. Typing her name in right now because it's kind of hard to spell. Dr. Cherian researches how space, especially STEM spaces, impact a person's sense of belonging as a STEM individual, as someone who can be have a STEM career when they grow up. And her research is just fascinating, looking at how, you know, the design of a space impacts whether someone walks in and thinks to themselves, yeah, I belong here, or if they walk in and think to themselves that they don't. So I really tried to look into her research a lot when we were designing our space, and so that's where, like, the kind of really clean, open floor comes in, and the white, like the very clean white metal shelves that are all along the back wall there. It was a very purposeful decision not to. Oh, thanks for sharing that, Jackie. Hi, Jackie. Those shelves are a very purposeful decision not to put up like the wire metal shelving that you'd see in a lot of industrial spaces, including like my garage at home. But because they're more neutral, and Dr. Cherian found that supports people in feeling like they belong there. Jackie Gerstein, who's commenting right now, I learned so much from her before I opened my makerspace, so it's slightly daunting that she's here. But hi, Jackie, it's great to see you. So that was how we opened, and in the first 2 months of our space being open, every class in the school had come in, which was overwhelming, and I wasn't getting enough sleep at night, but that was really important because that immediately got every kid feeling like this was a place where they belonged just as much as any other kid. And that was something I worked really hard to make sure every single kid got in. It was mostly like cute little intro projects, like our pre-Kers made crowns out of pipe cleaners and LEDs. Like, these first ones weren't anything really deep, but it was important in building that sense of belonging. And then from there, we were building up the projects that were curriculum integrated. Another piece about how our space works is none of the classes have scheduled times. It's not like the second grade comes in every Tuesday at 1 o'clock. It's that I work with my colleagues like Lina to plan projects and then schedule those projects. And so there's, you know, 5th grade might come in every day for 2 weeks, and then not come in again for a couple months. And similarly with everybody else. 7th grade science did 3 projects in here, I want to say, last year that were each like a week or 2 long. And so they weren't in here all the time, but when they were in here, it was really dense. And I really liked that. I've seen it done a lot of different ways in different schools, and I learned that particular structure from Angie Chow at Castellea School. Castellea is another fantastic school that's doing great work like this that you could look into. There might consider, my position is coordinator, so I'm no longer a classroom teacher, which when I taught my last 7th grade science class in spring of 2015, I guess it was very hard and I was sad. But yeah, I'm no longer a classroom teacher.
But I think coordinator is a really great way for her to say that too, because the thing that she does that makes it so easy for teachers to come in here is by getting every kid in here right away. She also got every teacher in here right away, and they actually just looked around and were like, oh, you have this in here. I have this in my classroom. I could just come here and do this and get the support from another teacher. And Lindsay's offered, like, I can plan something for you that's unrelated to your curriculum and just a great activity. And that was great in the first week because you do those get to know you, get to know the kids' activity where the curriculum doesn't feel like you're running out of time yet. Or she says, talk to me about your curriculum and I can find a project that will connect to it. Or come to me with something you want to do and I'll support you. And being able to have all those options makes it so accessible to teachers and less overwhelming. So I think as a teacher, you want to do it, but you're not sure how, you don't know when it could be. And having the time and the space open so you can say, well, I can do it at this time in these weeks, but I can't come every Friday for the rest of the year. I don't have that kind of time. So it just makes it really accessible. And I think that the coordination of it is what makes it so great. And I love to do all these things, and I get overwhelmed, and I'm like, oh, I really want to do this thing. And Lindsey's like, oh, well, I'll do that part of it. And I think, wow, it's suddenly possible. So it's really like having another teacher that has all the expertise and all the tools.
Yeah, my job's really fun. So I'd love to tell you about a few of the projects that we've been doing. I think Ashley mentioned that the whole slideshow was going to be available. There are some slides in here that just have like a ton of text because like I wanted to give you guys just, here's a list of all the projects we did last year just to help stimulate ideas. That's a really boring slide to look at during a presentation, but it might be a valuable slide to look at later. So Ashley, can you just confirm like people will be able to come and just look at the slides later? And
yep, absolutely.
I'll let her type that in and go on to the next slide. Oh, thanks, Ashley. Examples of how we've been doing this, like I mentioned, preschool through 8th grade. There was a little bit of worry at the beginning that people were going to think of it as just a science space because I was a science teacher and I was the 7th grade science teacher here for 8 years before I moved into this position. So that's how everybody knew me. But that was another thing I worked really hard on and that a lot of us worked really hard on was making sure that this was clear that it was not just science. And so our world language teachers used this space and did projects in here. I mean, probably the most of any group in the school. So we did all these amazing world language projects. And also social emotional learning stuff, design thinking and, building things for other people, the whole gamut. And then also there was kind of the range of building as well. So from like pretty guided projects where all the kids were building their own version of the same thing, all the way through really open invention where it was like, invent something to solve this problem, and it was super open-ended. So I've got a bunch of examples here I'd like to share with you guys. Keep throwing up questions in the chat, and if you want me to go back, we can do that, and yeah. So first project to show you guys, I've kind of gone little kids through big kids here. So this was a preschool project last year. They were studying bats. They did a little unit on bats. And we were like, oh, well, we could, in brainstorming with my colleagues, I know, isn't this a great picture? I wish I could show you with her eyes, but privacy, blah, blah, blah. We could build a bat cave, or maybe we could each have the kids like build a bat, and we're like, okay, well, how open-ended do we want this to be? And so what we finally came down to was the kids were really curious about echolocation, and they were asking all these questions about how do bats hear, and does that mean they can't see? And they really wanted to think more about how bats hear. And so we decided to have them create their own bat ears that would let them hear like a bat. And so the idea was try to make something that would, quote, unquote, catch the sound, because they kept using, that was how they talked about it in preschool, was the bats catch the sound in their big cup-shaped ears. And it was not only really fun and adorable and watching them practice like making things that were big and round, and they were looking at pictures of bats trying to do this. It also brought to light some fascinating misconceptions that the preschoolers had developed about catching sound. And this picture here, this young lady, she was really able to describe hers. The big shaped cups were what, had the sound help go into her ears. but she still didn't totally get it, of course. I mean, she's 4. But then a couple kids, like this one kiddo had this cup that was on a long stream of, I know, right? It was on a long stream of straws, and he was holding the cup way up in the air. He was holding the cup way up in the air, and he had the straw coming into his ear. And there was no way I could show this picture without showing the kid's face, so I never include it in presentations. But he was like, the cup is up here so that it can catch the sound. And his teacher, Mary, and I were just like, oh, it helped us realize what he was understanding about this. And so we're going to tweak that unit a little bit this year to see if we can like use a new way of describing catching the sound. And so that was just it was super fun for the kids. It was fun for us. And they had to, all of their designs were totally different. And they had to build some serious fine motor skills. I lost count of how many children I taught how to tear masking tape last year. Had no idea that was a skill that needed to be taught to young children. Again, 7th grade teacher my whole career. This is a project on the opposite end of the spectrum, not age-wise, but open-endedness-wise. Those bat ears were so completely open-ended. This was probably the most structured, clear, open-ended finish to any project we did. These are the kindergartners. That young man on the left, I can show his eyes because I'm his mother, so I have no privacy concerns. That's my cutie little man. But they were studying construction, and the kids had some questions about arches, why do they work? And so my assistant and I made these blocks that were this shape and had the kids make arches. And the teacher completely could have done this in their own classrooms, and it was so highly structured that but it was still super effective, and the kids really understood arches after that. And of course the kindergartners did all kinds of other open-ended stuff, but just really to show the spectrum. Like this, we did absolutely do stuff like this where it's more just the having their hands in stuff. And Jackie's mentioning that she was surprised I had to teach kids how to tear tape. I mean, I just today I was teaching 2nd grader. It was one 2nd grader. Most of the kids were fine, but I did have a 2nd grader who could not tie a knot. Like not tying a bow like tying shoes, but like could not tie a knot. And poor little guy was so frustrated. But I do have a very strict rule. I will not do something for you. And your friends are not allowed to do something for you, your teacher. So if you ask for help, I'll talk you through it. I'll show you with materials in my own hands. Same with your friends. They can talk you through it, but cannot do it for you. And this poor little guy today with the knots, he finally was just like, can I just use something else? And I was like, yeah, dude, that's fine. Like you're not there with knots yet. But I was really surprised that a 2nd grader couldn't tie a knot. And the tape thing was fascinating, like looking at kids trying to tear the tape and just going like, all right, I have to talk you through it. Like I had to think about what are the steps of tearing tape and walking them through it, but they got there. Tape and knots are 2 big ones. I'd have to think through some other ones. I might think of others as we go through, but
I think a couple I've noticed is just also organization and letting the kids know exactly how you want things to go back. Like that when you put a bin back, the label faces forward. And kids don't think about that little tiny piece that's really actually important when you're organizing a lot of things. On the other spectrum, I think we run into finding out how quickly kids do learn and how much you don't have to show them. I think we did a laser cutting project at the first of the year last year, and we were showing them Illustrator, and none of them had ever seen this program before. And Lindsay got up and told them like 3 things, and I was like, well, that's not going to be enough. And by the end of the class, half of them had finished designing pretty intricate signs that could be cut and etched in laser cutter. And I was like, wow, sometimes we think we have to teach too much, and letting them try out is actually more important.
Yeah. I definitely tend to err on the end of give them too little information because then I can add more. Whereas like if I spend 20 minutes at the beginning of the class time, then they're out of time by the time we're presenting it. So that tends to work decently well. You guys are mentioning some great stuff in the comments as well. Hot glue guns are good times. I like that poster. I think I'm going to make that poster. Thank you. I let kids as low as 3rd grade use the hot glue guns. Their teachers thought I was insane last year, but it went great. There were 2 kiddos in the entire 50 in 6th grade, or 3rd grade, sorry, in 3rd grade who kept burning themselves. One was my daughter, so I was like, whatever, you're on your own, dude. And the other little guy, he burned himself a bunch of times, but he stayed smiling, so I let him keep doing it, and eventually he didn't anymore. Hot glue guns are great, highly recommended, super cheap. As long as we're throwing out great tools, I've started using glue dots like crazy.
Oh, we just discovered that.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Glue dots are great because young kids can use them. They don't get hot. And instead of like kids coat stuff in masking tape, but glue dots are great and they're not too expensive. I buy the teeny tiny ones because the big ones are too big for 90% of the stuff that we're doing. And kindergartners can handle them. Our kindergartners used them fine at the end of the year last year when I finally went and bought some. So yeah, so all ends of the spectrum, really high-tech stuff to super low-tech stuff, super open-ended, invent this thing, to like, here are some very concrete materials, but I want you to do a very concrete thing. We do the whole shebang. This is a 3rd grade project that was it was a great combination of digital and hard copy. Oh my God, you took apart an Etch-a-Sketch? That sounds awful. Huge mess. But this project that the picture is of here, this is with Makey-Makeys, which if you guys have some makerspace experience, probably you've played with them. Unfortunately, in this picture, it's hidden under this kiddo's hand. But, ooh, I'm going to do a thing. I'm going to ask a poll. Right at the participants menu, there's a little checkbox drop list, and you can do yes, no, or none. I'd love to just ask you guys how many of you have played with Makey-Makeys at all, just to get a sense. So I've already got 2 no's and 1 yes. Oh, lots of no's. Oh my God, you guys, go look at Makey-Makeys. I'm spelling it for you so you can see it. This is the coolest tool ever. They're also among the less expensive of, yeah, Jackie's backing me up. They're among the less expensive of digital toys, and I would say among the most flexible. So just to tell you what these kiddos are doing here, these are 3rd graders. Ooh, that's not good. These are 3rd graders, and they are, this is in their Spanish class. They're making dioramas. They're studying the jungle. And in the little picture of the diorama that these kiddos have made, I'm going to circle it because I'm having a lot of fun with circling things on the screen. In this diorama, you can see they've made the different items in their scene, and they've labeled each of them with the animal or the plant name in Spanish. And then with the Makey-Makey, what they've done is set up where when you touch one of the animals or one of the plants, it closes a circuit because your finger crosses between 2 pieces of tape, and so your finger is what's closing the circuit. And then it plays a little audio clip of them saying, El jaguar es en el árbol. My Spanish is terrible, but their Spanish is fantastic. And so then it was not only a great practice for them speaking, but then when they were going to each other's dioramas, they had to listen to each other speaking as well. And it was just a great great exercise. It was a great project. The Spanish teacher and I are going to find a way this year to make it a bit shorter because it took a little longer than we would have wanted. But now that I've got more practice with the Makey-Makeys, I think I can support them in making buttons that work better. Do you want to say something about Makey-Makeys? Because you guys use them a ton in 5th grade.
Yeah, we do, and I don't really know how to use them, which is great because the kids figure it out really quick. And the first time we used them was before our makerspace opened, the Big Lab hadn't opened, but we were doing, we made huge scale models of an ancient civilization, and we told them you have to incorporate technology in some way. Here's some Makey-Makeys. And then our tech teacher also was gone for some reason, so we had some sub come in and just kind of tell the kids. And I think I was actually out too, so I got none of the instructions. But the kids learn them really quickly, and they are so flexible. They did things like you touch something to get a quiz, or you found out more about it, or you could touch something and hear the music from the ancient civilization. And now we're a little more savvy with it, and we know kind of what we want too. And this year we said that they had to make something interactive that used technology. And I think my favorite all time was a student made armor. I think he was put in Rome.
It was awesome.
He made armor and swords, and using the makey-makeys, he made it possible for you to sword fight with an opponent, and with your sword touched their armor at a point. And whoever got to a certain, I think 10 points, won, and it would let you know that you won. So it was incredibly interactive, and really he had to think hard about how to make it work, and he had to attach a bunch to have a long enough connection. So it was just really great to see how far the kids can go with it, and really beyond what I could possibly imagine for them, by allowing them to do anything that was interactive with the technology and taught about the civilization. Oh, you can hear me. So I'm probably just too far away. So should get closer.
I'm also looking for a picture of this thing. Oh, I found it, because you guys will love it. It's hysterical. So here's a picture of some adults playing with the thing that Lina was just describing. Can you guys hear us better now? Excellent. Okay. Someone earlier also, when we were talking about makey-makey, someone also up above mentioned Little Bits, and Little Bits are an awesome tool as well. They're a little bit more expensive than makey-makeys, but they're also super flexible, and you can just do really fascinating things with them. If you want, so we're showing you some projects here, and Lina's telling you about this 5th grade museum project, which is amazing. I've got a bunch more projects on a website that I've been writing for, and if you go to that website and look at my name, you'll see a bunch more projects that we've done this year, including lots of pictures. Maria, you know what? We could switch to video and show them Fina's thing.
Oh, yeah,
real quick. I've got it right here.
Yeah. Yeah, so the other thing that we were trying to get them away from is just the, like, you ask it, like, they'll make a little card that asks a question, you press the button, and you get an answer. And so when we push them a little farther, we said you can do things like puzzles where there's more than one connection, or you can go beyond that, and I wouldn't have thought of this or nothing, but they did. And so this is a really incredible example.
Okay, I'm going to turn on the video. If it completely destroys you guys, like if it destroys our web, I'll just turn it off. You can just say so. But here we come. So I just turned on our video. Oh, thank you, Ashley. All right, here we are. Hello. So this is an example of one of these makey-makey projects. It's from Lina's Ancient Civilizations project. And so this kiddo, this is a 5th grader, bear in mind, what, 11 years old, 10, 11 years old? And he laser cut this whole box. And so this is made to sit down over a laptop so that the screen is visible right here, but the keyboard and the wires and everything are hidden. So underneath this whole thing is where the makey-makey is. And so the makey-makey is plugged into a few different buttons, and all this wiring is everything is hidden underneath. And then what the goal of it is to spell some word using Egyptian hieroglyphics. And he made these puzzle pieces. And here's one of the puzzle pieces that he made, also laser cut and etched. And he put copper tape on the back. Copper tape is conductive, but he put it in a very specific place. So when you put the copper tape in the right, or when you put the puzzle piece in the right spot, it matches 2 little pieces of copper tape. And so when it's in the right spot, it closes that circuit, and that tells the makey-makey, oh, it's as though you push the space bar, which tells your Scratch program, space bar means it's in the correct place. You win! I know, right? Dropped your jaw. You should have seen us when he showed us. It was amazing. Oh, that may be, Ashley, can you answer Amy's question?
And I think this is just a good example, too, of how having all these...
Oh, hold on.
Oh.
Oh, never mind.
Oh, okay.
I know, that's pretty much what he did, honestly, is drop the mic.
Yeah. But he used all the elements we could possibly think of. Like, he used the electronics, he used the laser cutter, and he was so specific about sizing. And then he hot glue gunned it. I mean, without all of these pieces, he could have done a really amazing project. Obviously, he could do that with anything. But he put all those elements together, and he had the space and time. He also spent a lot of recesses in because he couldn't stop working. But, I mean, it's our sample now.
Yeah. And one other bit to throw in is that this is a kiddo who isn't as like super on top of everything in the traditional classroom. You know, doesn't always get his homework done, isn't always super focused. But when this kid's in here, like, I had no idea. I assumed he was like the star student of the 5th grade because in here he was just so into everything.
Yeah, so this is a kid we're offering accommodations in other areas, and he just threw it away here and really showed his understanding of the content as well. It wasn't just about the craft.
Yeah, also super important. So we'll go ahead and turn this off. We can we can take you around and show you the space later if we have time. Oh, we're so not going to have time, but you can also, you know, email us and ask questions. And there's a ton of pictures at that Getting Smart site too. All right, turning off the video, back to just sound. So yeah, makeys are incredible, but again, it's just a tool. It happens to be a very flexible and very neat tool. So then going on, this is then going to a 6th grade project. The 6th graders, and this is actually an interesting example because this is something that the 6th grade math team has done for years, like the whole time I've been here.
It's probably more than 20 years.
Yeah, probably more than 20 years. They've been doing a casino night. And so the kids make casino games, and it's part of a statistics unit, and they're supposed to, it's not just playing the games, they're also supposed to try to like trick the people who are playing their games, and there's a bunch of interesting stuff to it. But this year we had our makerspace, and the kids were able to do so much more than they had ever done before. And this was in September and October of last year. So we had just opened. None of the kids had used a single one of these tools. I hadn't used a bunch of the tools, like they were still in their wrappers. And but they still did so much more. And I'm super excited for this year because this year's 6th graders include like that kiddo that we just showed you. Like that class has a ton of experience now with 3D printing and laser cutting and all that. And so I'm just super excited to see their casino game projects this year. But this is another one where it's like pretty open-ended. The kids had a ton of different kinds of things that they could make, but it just enhanced a project that had already existed. This wasn't a brand new project, but it was super fun. And then this is a 7th grade project, and these are some kiddos who made they were making electrical generators. So this was part of that hydroelectricity project. I showed you guys the project that I had done a couple of years ago, and this is our new 7th grade science teacher did this generator project. And these guys are super excited, not because this thing worked, because it did not work at all, but they knew why it didn't work, and they were excited about it. And I think this is another just great example of you know, the kids are so excited to be building things, and even if it doesn't work, that's fine, because they get it more deeply, even having made something that doesn't work. Also, our school is obsessed with ultimate frisbee, which, as these jerseys demonstrate. This is a project, so that's kind of going through by age, just giving a whole bunch of examples. This is a project that I'd like to tell you guys about a little bit separately because it's much more the social-emotional side. And so this was a really highly integrated project. This was social studies and science and what they had been doing with their social-emotional learning. These are 1st graders, and they had just finished this huge unit on diversity and especially disability diversity, and they have guest speakers. They have someone with achondroplasia, that's a form of dwarfism, someone who comes in and speaks to them. We have a parent with a prosthetic leg who comes in and speaks to them. A parent of someone with cerebral palsy. I mean, all these different people come in and talk to the kids about differences in ability. And we were talking about, like, what could we do as a final project for this? Like, we're not going to have first graders make prostheses. Like, we're not going to have all kinds of things first graders that aren't really developmentally appropriate. But what we decided to do was to have them design adaptive playgrounds. And so the ones that you can see, so I'll do a couple circles again. That color's fine. This young lady is pointing to a little silhouette that I laser cut, and this guy has another silhouette that I laser cut. So besides just the craftness of it and just like the fine motor skills and the amazing engineering the kids were doing, this was a place where the laser cutter came at a very surprisingly handy fashion, because they were designing these playgrounds, but we were really concerned about scale. And how do we help first graders think about scale? And when they're designing a playground for a child with achondroplasia, a child with dwarfism, how do they have any idea what that size is? Because for first graders, just doing something to scale for, a typical person's height is challenging. And so this was pretty cool, because I was able to make these little silhouettes of a typical height first grade child and the height of an average child with achondroplasia, which I was able to find those statistics online. And so they were able to really think about scale in a different way by having those models and be much more precise with their scales, of course. So that was really fun and just an amazing project that really got the kids thinking. Yeah, period. Got them thinking.
Yeah.
Did you know about that?
Yeah, the program they do on this lesson that the first grade teachers do is incredible.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, and that's one thing about the laser cutter too, is like we showed you some stuff that the kids have done. As a teacher, I've also used the laser cutter a ton for preparation work, and like if there's something that I want the kids to be able to make, but the bases for Oregon Trail wagons, for example. The body of the wagon wasn't that important for the kids to do themselves, but the the wheels and like the jockey box and the axle and all those were what was important. So I pre-laser cut the parts for the wagon body itself. And that just made it go so much faster. Otherwise, the kids would have spent a whole day just cutting out boxes.
Well, and I think another project that you did, not using laser cutter, but with 3D printer, I think the first grade also, they were studying sound.
Yeah.
And so you were able to, the kids in the past have always made instruments, but they were able to make wind instruments because you were able to pre-make so many different mouthpieces.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just really neat being able to produce stuff that the kids can use, besides the kids making stuff themselves.
That you can make just the way you need it, versus like trying to find just what you need. You just go, I'll just go make it.
You're such a maker.
Yeah.
Yeah, so mouthpieces for instruments. It's a very cool website. I'm putting it in here, thingiverse.com. I downloaded the mouthpieces. Somebody else had made them. I downloaded them, 3D print them, and they work most of the time. I have to fight with them sometimes to get them to work. If you're a wind musician, you know that the very, very precise angles of everything are tough. Tinkercad in school with a class of 16 children, I've only gone down to 3rd grade, and it was successful. We did a small project, but they did great. I did do a summer camp this summer, so a much smaller group of kids, and I think I had kids as low as going into 2nd grade, so having just finished 1st grade. Honestly, kids have an easier time than adults a lot with Tinkercad. Like, kids are used to Minecraft and, games where they're walking around in a 3D environment. Yeah, Tinkercad, thank you. Lina's first 3D design on Tinkercad was kind of amazing.
That is not my skill. My skill is teaching kids to try things out themselves. I think also one of the things that we've done when we want a younger child to do something but it's a little bit out of their reach is use our buddy system and have older kids. So we were designing, I think we were adopting trees. And so it was kindergarten and 5th grade, and so the kindergartners kind of could draw something, and then the kids put it into Adobe Illustrator for them, the older kids. And it was kind of a great teaching moment and a good collaboration for them to do what they could do best and help each other. And they were both sharing a computer, and then they would let them do what they could and then fill in when they needed to.
And those were very cute.
Yeah, super.
Another interesting thing, a bunch of folks are mentioning 2nd graders using Tinkercad, and totally, I think 2nd graders definitely have like the capacity to. Our 2nd graders don't have a ton of experience yet with computers. Like, a lot of our 2nd graders are still really kind of just getting used to mice. So some of that is our school specific. I'm also really interested to see for us, as we have this space for longer, I anticipate all of these tools being used younger and younger and younger, because they're just starting to use them. Like our 8th graders who just graduated with rudimentary understanding of Adobe Illustrator for designing for the laser cutter, whereas like our current 6th graders are experts at it. And so it's going to keep shifting, and I imagine that'll be the same with Tinkercad as well, as we start moving stuff down.
I haven't tried out, but there are some programs that you can use on the iPad where you can draw with your fingers instead of having to use a mouse. And I think when you use those programs you can go down even younger.
Yeah, we're not an iPad school, and so we haven't really played with iPad stuff much yet. There's also really great tools for vector design, which is what you would need for laser cutting, or for vinyl cutting for that matter. A vinyl cutter is also kind of a cuts out neat shapes kind of tool, but much cheaper, and you can still do a lot of really neat stuff with it. It's more on the order of like cardstock instead of like thick corrugated cardboard, but a great tool. And if your institution's not ready to go whole hog with a laser cutter yet, vinyl cutter can be a good place to start. Yeah. I have played with Sculptress. Hatton's asking about Sculptress. Just a tiny bit and a little bit with kids. We haven't really gotten deep into it much yet, but I do want to play with it more. Have you seen Sculptress?
Yeah, right.
It's you start like, instead of building stuff, you start out with a ball of dough on your screen.
And you switch it around.
Yeah, and you can pinch and pull and tuck it, and never mind. Yeah, it's weird. I want to play with it more, but thanks for mentioning that one, Hatton. Yeah, we do have Sculptress installed on our in our digital lab over here. A couple kids have played with it, but not a ton yet. Yeah, we weren't sure how this was going to go, so I just kind of threw some stuff in here. But how do we actually come up with this stuff is a question that a lot of people ask. Like, okay, here are all these cool ideas, but how the heck do you even come up with it? And I've been trying to kind of piece that apart of like, what is our process? Because it's kind of like, when a really good teacher asks a kid just like the right question to get them to the next step, but the teacher can't explain how they chose that question. That's a little bit how I feel, and I'm sure you feel too, Lina, of like, we come up with these ideas, but I don't know where it came from. Like, so I've been trying to piece that apart. And one piece that I know is really big is getting the root learning objective, because Lina and I have both come up with a ton of ideas where we're like, what about this, and what about this, and what about this? And one of our colleagues will go, how does that actually get to the learning objective that we're talking about?
But I will put in I do think you should do really fun things, because it gets you to go, oh, I can use it for this. Yeah. And so experimenting and doing the fun thing is a really good first step. And I think it's really important for like teachers to do things like make presents for holidays for their families because they start to use those tools and go, oh, I could do this with my kids in this way. So I think once you kind of have an idea about the tool, then go from that objective. And we were actually just talking about this earlier today because we, last year, we have a big Halloween carnival here, and last year our 8th graders designed all of our prizes for the carnival using the laser cutter, which was awesome because we needed just an introduction to the laser cutter. And so this year I want to do it again, but our tech teacher's like, yeah, I don't need to do that. It doesn't meet my objectives because they already know how to use that. And so I need to do something that really meets the objectives of what I want to teach them, not just do something. So now we have to say, okay, well then where can we move this? And we might move this project down to a lower grade because they can do it now.
And they don't have that experience, and it would be a good learning objective. So it's 4:25, and we're supposed to be done in 5 minutes, and we really haven't had any time for Q&A. We've gone through a whole bunch of examples. There are several more slides, but a lot more of the slides are just kind of what I mentioned at the beginning of like gigantor list of projects that we've done. The slide I just flipped up through is like some examples of kind of how our brainstorming process went, which might be interesting for folks to look at. Ashley, quick question. Can people look through the slide deck right now by themselves, or can they only look at what I'm looking at?
They can only see what you're looking at, unfortunately.
Okay, cool. So I'll flip through and show you guys what's here real quick, but I do want to have a minute to answer your questions because I know we've gone much longer than we were supposed to, leaving time for Q&A. So I'll show you what's here real quick, and if you want to start putting your questions into the chat, go ahead and start putting those in while I'm showing you what's here. So this slide is brainstorming, some brainstorming stuff, including some of the brainstorming we did for the 5th grade project that Lina's been talking about, the Ancient Civilizations one. The ones that are in bold are the ones we actually did. The ones that are in italics were just like cool ideas that we had that we decided not to do. And then there's a couple other examples. If you want to email me, I can tell you more about them. There's also info about them at gettingsmart.com. And then these are the 2 slides I really wanted to show you, the master list of all the projects we did this year, just to get you more ideas. This is everything we did in the fall, and this is everything we did in the spring. And then that's just the last slide is, you know, how can we help? What advice can we give you guys? My boss is speaking in going, what the heck are you guys doing? We're doing a webinar about makerspaces right now. We're almost done. Okay, what questions do you guys have? Is there a particular slide you'd like me to hang out on so you can look at it some more? Crickets. Thank you, Jackie. See you at South by. Awesome. I hope that was helpful, Heather. I don't know if we should be saying anything.
I'm not quite sure what to say now.
Thanks, you guys. You know, the internet, the Twitters, these conversations are constantly happening. The hashtag MakerEd is a great place. There's constantly people sharing project ideas, and you can throw out a question. Yeah, add the hashtag MakerEd, and you'll have a bunch of people who'll answer you. Another really great hashtag that isn't, yay, thank you, Tamara. Another great hashtag that isn't maker specific, but that is very like project and design thinking oriented, and where there's just this massive group of amazing people who answer questions for you, is DTK12 chat. So that's design thinking 12 chat. So throw out questions there, and you're also welcome to ask me questions, and I'll throw questions at Lina. Lina avoids social media, but yeah.
There was a question about online spaces for online learners.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know of any.
I guess I'm not sure what the question is that you're asking, Tracy. Like digital making, is that what you mean? So like Tinkercad is online, and you could do some amazing 3D design that doesn't necessarily need to be printed, but that is just great for exploring. You can download Tinkercad files for Minecraft. Haven't tried it yet, but it's on the list. And so that, then you can interact with it in sort of a digital space. There's, I think it's DIY.org, if somebody wants to check that real quick. DIY.org is a great source where you could like kind of host an online class, but people are doing things in their own spaces at home. Hatton mentioned Project Ignite. Project Ignite is awesome. And then someone asked about online portfolios. We don't yet. That's somewhere we're going. DIY.org is also a good online portfolio site. Getting Smart is another one that has a bunch of examples of stuff that our kiddos have done, but that's just what I've written, not what the kids have written.
What about, what was the thing that we tried out last year that it rotated into pictures of the project?
The
Spin, can you go on and see projects there?
It's kind of shut down.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so there's this amazing tool called the Spin that this incredible engineer Tiffany Tseng invented as a project tracking tool, but she got her PhD and has left MIT, and I think she's working for Autodesk now. But yeah, that doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately. There's also a tool that we've used a tiny bit called, what's that, Goalbook.
I have not used it.
Yeah, you have. You used it.
Okay.
Anyway, Goalbook.
I haven't used
was
it again.
30 years ago.
Yeah.
But that's another interesting one. Yep, that's our school, the Evergreen School. We're in Shoreline, Washington. I saw there was somebody in Seattle. Come visit. We welcome tours for sure. If anybody has professional development funds that they want to go somewhere where they can learn more about this amazing stuff, iNicole, of course, is in October. I know, right? I wish we could fly you out. And then South by Southwest EDU is in March in April. And that's where I met Jackie, who was in here earlier, and a bunch of other just amazing folks who I've learned a ton from. Without all the folks that I've met on Twitter and all these various places, I would not be able to do what I'm doing right now. It's amazing what I've learned.
Lindsey, you guys have just absolutely blown me away today. This is absolutely incredible. I think we could sit here for 3 more hours and listen to 90 million more examples, but what you're doing for kids is fantastic. So if anybody has any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to iNicole. We're happy to connect you all with one another. Sincerely, thank you so much to both of you for joining us today and sharing your expertise and amazing creativity. It's just absolutely amazing. We'll do our best to get these slides and the archived webinar up on our website ASAP, and we'll send you all an email with those links soon. So I hope you attend future webinars. I hope you attend the iNicole Symposium in October, and I hope to see you all again soon. So thank you, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Thanks.
You too. Bye-bye.